Hello, everyone. I am delighted to be here. Thank you to Quantum for inviting me. Given all the speakers you've had, and hopefully you've had a good 2 days, and hopefully today this is an uplifting talk for you at the end of 2 days, but why did Quantum NL Netherlands invite a white, straight, neurotypical, cisgender man without disabilities to talk about inclusion and diversity? I'm hoping that the story I'm going to talk to you today will get you to understand why. So I'm Daniele Fiandaca. I am founder of Token Man Consulting. I'm going to tell you a bit of my story. So I'm going to give you a bit of background. I've been running Token Man Consulting now for 9 months, but I've been in the inclusion diversity space for nearly a decade. I'm going to talk to you today about my personal journey. So why am I here? What I've learned along the way, and also the benefits of leaning into inclusion diversity. So today is going to be interactive. I'm not going to put anyone on the spot, but you are going to get to chat to each other as well, and I really want to hear. And today's really about you talking about what shifts and what changes we can all make. Because ultimately, when we talk about inclusion, diversity, and you'll notice I say it a lot, I always say inclusion first. It's simply because what I've learned is in the English language, if you say 2 or 3 words, someone only ever hears the first word. So when someone used to say to someone like me, diversity and inclusion, all I heard was diversity. And I thought it wasn't for me. Okay, so it's really important that we start understanding that inclusion, equity, and diversity is for everyone. So my personal journey, where did it all start? I used to work in advertising. I'm sure I'm also a qualified chartered accountant. I hope you can tell which one I spent the most time in. But this is something that I co-founded and I ran for 14 years, which is called Creative Social. We did events around the world. I don't think I need to tell you what the problem that photo is. Okay, when we talk about something like quantum, if I look at so many industries, that photo was actually taken 12 years ago. But what you can see, there's only one woman in this photo and there's only one person of colour. Carolina actually left the industry 9 months later, nothing to do with this event. But just to give you an idea, and I'd realised that we had a real issue, and I really felt it when we did events. When we went into events, we were actually overrepresented of the industry. So the advertising industry 12 years ago, famously, only had 12% of female creative directors. And this group was for creative directors. We actually had 26% members. Every time we did an event somewhere around the world, you really felt it. It was what I'd call, in English, laddie. Don't know how you'd say it in European, but it was really quite masculine, and I could see how it could be very exclusionary for anyone that didn't fit within that, behave in that way. So I organised a dinner. This isn't a photo of the dinner. It's just to give you a very visual representation. I organised a dinner for 12 women in London to try and recruit them to Creative Social. When I turned up for that dinner, and Creative Social was a hobby, by the way, I just did it in my spare time. I was managing partner at the time of an advertising agency. When I walked into the dinner and saw 12 women, that wasn't a surprise. I organised it. I invited them. What was a surprise is what happened the minute I walked into that room. The minute I walked into that room, something happened to me that never happened to me in my career. I lost my confidence. People that know me well don't actually believe it's possible. But it was as if this magic hand came down and pulled my confidence away. Then we sat down for dinner, and the conversations that were happening around me, I had very little affinity to, and I felt myself being pushed further and further out. And I can see a few people shaking their heads because they feel this every day. And then we came on to gender equality, and I think I said one thing, and then realised that what I'd said was very wrong, and then I just realised I needed to just shut up. All of these things, and also actually I got up to introduce the dinner and the person I was co-hosting with completely cut me off. These were all things that I'd heard women talk to me about experiencing in the boardroom. And it's not that I didn't believe them, I just didn't understand the extent of what it felt like to be in the out-group. But secondly, I was a brilliant human being. I definitely didn't think I contributed to that exclusion. But the reality is that having done that dinner, I realised I was contributing to every day. Partly on a Tuesday morning, for those that are into English football, I've had this talk 4 weeks ago, it would have been a much positive one, but I'm an Arsenal fan. But I would come into a Tuesday morning with a senior leadership team, and I would see Pete, and we'd talk about football. And at the time, we had 10 men and 2 women in the senior leadership team. And those 2 women weren't interested in football. So I realized that just by opening that up, I was pushing them further out. So even in my actions, I was actually excluding people. But more importantly, I started to realize that if I wasn't changing the system, I was part of the system. So therefore, I was by definition excluding people every day. So we started Token Man. So Token Man was actually started back in 2014. And Token Man is actually set up to give men a better understanding of the challenges women face when in the workplace and inspire them to help create more inclusive cultures. Obviously, that's grown now. It's not just about women, it's about women and any other marginalised groups and understanding what exclusion looks like. And the reason why it's so important that men are in this discussion is because no minority in history has ever affected change without the support of the majority. And certainly 10 years ago, it wasn't just that men weren't being invited into the room, they often weren't welcome in the room. And how can we actually create change if men aren't part of that change? So, 9 years ago, I had never worked in inclusion and diversity. I'd worked in advertising, I'd been an accountant. I had no idea what I was doing. And so what I did is I copied what everyone else was doing. And what the gender networks and the women's network were doing is they were talking about allyship. They were saying to men, come in the room and be our allies, come and help us. And what happened for the next 4 years is I found myself in rooms like this. Not a man in sight. I end up just speaking to women, which is kind of pointless. That isn't why I set up Token Man. And when I started talking about allyship, men weren't coming into the room. And so about 5 years ago, I realized I had a problem because I set up Token Man to speak to men to bring them on a journey. And I had a problem. How do I get them in the room? And then I picked this up. So this is a book my wife bought me just before we got married. So if you can tell the date, 28th December 2012. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. And it's one of those books which she gets asked nice questions about me. And you can imagine 2 months before we're about to get married, she's not going to think more highly of me than that point in time. So I now have that written in so I've never reminded them of those words, but I was just reading it even just now, and it made my heart warm. But the brain is a wonderful thing. I was really struggling what I needed to do with Token Man. And I picked this book up for the first time in 4.5 years. Just picked it up. It'd been on the side. I hadn't read it since we got married. And I came to this page. The time I felt close to you was 2011 was our annus horribilis. You have always shown strength, and I've always admired that about you. But this was the year I saw something I'd never seen in you before, and that was your vulnerable side. It doesn't come out very often, and all I wanted to do was look after you. 2011 was the year my brother died. And as you can tell, it's had a significant impact on me. And just reading that was like a gut punch, because I was spending all this time saying to men, come in the room to help others. And I hadn't spent any time whatsoever understanding the impact, the negative impact the patriarchy has on men. Why did it take, I've been with my wife for 10 years before we got married. Why did it take the death of my brother for her to see my vulnerable side? And so that was the moment I started realizing I had to do something differently. Because what you see, and when you look at the systems that currently exist, those systems harm almost everyone. Okay, so we started to really think about how could the best way for us to get men in the room was actually to start to talk to them and understand what they were doing, what issues they were having, and understanding that the journey that we want society to go on actually can benefit everyone. So we actually launched Masculinity in the Workplace. So Masculinity in the Workplace is an event we've been running now for 5 years. I just said to Lee, he didn't know about it, but Rolls-Royce is actually one of our partners, so it was nice to see Rolls-Royce up here. So we run it, it's been 5 years, and it's the only event in the UK, probably in the world actually, that is an I&D event, which is majority in-group, i.e. white straight men. Okay, so we bring men together and we get them to look at some of the issues that they're facing, but also how they can go on their journeys as well. And I'll talk at the end a model that I've been using to really look at how we can engage more men. This is Jordan Stevens. He said at our first ever event, I love this quote, "I believe this is an opportunity for us to truly empower ourselves as men, hold ourselves accountable, and reap the harmonious benefits of relinquishing privilege." So, as an aside, I'm not just here because I started masculinity in the workplace. I have actually, for 6 years, been running I&D consultancy. So I ran something called Utopia for 5 years. I'm very proud of the business. It is probably one of the leading I&D consultants in the world now with some amazing clients. And I stepped away last year to focus really on engaging men and senior leaders. So that's enough about me, but let me talk about what I've learnt and why I do what I do and how I hopefully bring these learnings to others. So the first thing is, it's much harder than I could ever have imagined to be in the out-group. So if you type the word privilege into Google Images, you get someone that looks like me. I have many privileges. But probably when you talk about the workplace, one of the biggest privileges is I didn't get to feel what it felt like to be in the out-group till I was 39. Okay, whereas so many people feel what it's like about every day, and for anyone here, it's female or comes from any other historically marginalised groups, I'm sure you do feel that being in the out-group nearly every day. Yeah, and I do know through the work I do how tiring that can be. And I know this is based in London, but this is universal. I think this image, I'm going to show you a short film that I think encapsulates quite well what it's like. On this particular one, it's looking at women, but I think, again, you could actually take this to any other historically marginalised group.
Hello, gentlemen. Take the escalator, please. Thank you very much. Ladies, up the stairs. Thank you. Gents, you can take it. Escalator right to the top. Thank you very much. Ladies, take the stairs, please. Stairs. Gents, take the escalator. Ladies, take the stairs, please. Gents, take the escalator. Ladies, take the stairs, please. If you don't mind. Over here. Up the escalator. Ladies, take the stairs, please. Thank you very much. Thank you. Gents, go up the escalator if you want. Push up the escalator. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ladies, can you take the stairs, please? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. It's just the way it is. Yep, it is. Stairs, please. Thank you very much. Yep, it's just the way it is. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you. Gentlemen, can you take the escalator, please? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
In 2018.
So, I've shown that to so many people, and there's so much in there, and I've watched at least 5, and I hear new story, again, just showing what it's like to be a mother and a carer, the pushchair, that extra time. I think my favourite comment, and again, not favourite, but just that observation, someone said, a woman I showed this to 2 months ago, and she said, yeah, when you get to the top, you're bloody exhausted. Yeah, just so understanding just that impact and that continuous impact of getting there. This stat's a relatively old stat. It's about 5, 6 years old, but it's the stat that actually I just think really shows why I do the work that I do and we do at Token Man. 81% of women feel some form of exclusion at work, yet 92% of men don't believe they're excluding women. Okay, that just shows the gap that exists. The gap is huge. And let's be really clear here. 10 years ago, I was one of these men. Yeah, so sitting here now, we've all contributed, and this is about what we can do going forward as opposed to what's happened in the past. So what I'm going to do, again, we're going to do 3 of these sets. Please just speak to someone if you don't know them next to you. What I want you to do, we're going to do 3 minutes each time. I'm going to give you a question. I want you to discuss it in pairs or in threes. Yeah, so the first question, and we'll come around with a roving mic. What gender-related issues do women face in quantum? Okay, so in little groups, in pairs or in threes, just discuss this for 3 minutes.
We need a woman. Okay.
See you later, mate. Yeah, no, yeah.
Make sure my mic is off. Yes. I think it's probably universal. I would say in quantum, in physics or IT, it's
So
those
we
are
need the
much
mic
more
just after the session.
male-dominated professions than others. So that fundamental problem is probably worse in those communities. Sure. It always helps. You know, when you want to, whatever thing you're interested in participating, if you see people like you, it's just so much easier. And so when you don't, then you just naturally feel a little bit like an outsider. I think. Yeah, I think that's particularly true for quantum. I think for a big problem for women, especially, is there's a traditional role of women being mothers, and I think jobs and society, like benefits or time off for when you have a child kind of thing, often isn't very supportive of women in a way that like men don't experience, right? Because it's like, oh, if you want to have a family.
Okay, who would like to share some of the issues you're talking about? We've got a roving mic here. If you've got a loud voice, feel free to shout, or we've got a roving mic. Put your hand up.
Is it working?
It is.
Yeah, okay, we were just discussing that maybe an issue is like generally I feel quite comfortable in a male-dominated environment. But what I notice is that sometimes the men are not as comfortable. So it would be easier for the men to talk to male colleagues and put assignments towards male colleagues, which also ends up with them having the results and them being rewarded for the results. So maybe that's even affecting like the pay gap, right?
Yeah.
I must honestly say, at the moment, I'm in a much better environment, but I've really experienced that. So while I might be comfortable, they are not always, and then you stay on the outside a little bit, even though you're comfortable to stand up for yourself.
Yeah, so I first interviewed a very senior exec from Google 5 years ago on International Women's Day, and he told a story. In that he worked in sales as the head of sales. So he purposely had his office at the end, so he had to walk past everyone. And someone just said to him, do you realise that when you come in and speak to people as you're walking to your office, you only speak to the men? And it just was, and he literally was flabbergasted. So he actually, what he talked about was he started doing lunches once a month just with the women across the team. So he did basically token-man lunches. So just that bias, and he was shocked. He had no idea he was doing that, but 100% we see that quite a lot.
It's not on purpose at all, right?
Yeah,
just
not
a
completely,
little bit of
totally.
being uncomfortable will prevent you from doing that.
And having something in common, finding something in common. Who else wants to share what you talked about? one over there, and then one over here.
Thank you very much. I think the question can be extended to not only quantum but computer science, because in fact it's a field where women are not well represented, and it's important, I guess, to just have symbols and women that can, yes, motivate young people, young women to go in this field. And there are no reasons why a woman would be less, I don't know, less. Not great computer scientists, and I think it can be seen in a larger view in computer science, not only quantum, and also, of course, scientific fields where there are not, and sometimes not women are underrepresented. I think.
Yeah, I know someone that went into his kids' school. He had a daughter, and he just went into the kids' school, and he said he walked in and he saw the girls were all together playing with dolls, and the boys were all making Lego and building stuff. And he said, does this usually happen? It was a female teacher, by the way. Does this usually happen? He goes, yeah, of course. Well, they are going to be the future scientists. You know, it really is, these stereotypes really are ingrained. One more, just the back here. Just here. This gentleman here.
Yeah, it was actually a very similar point that, I mean, I do see it's getting better, but we discussed that there definitely around 10 years ago, there were basically no role models, which means that, I mean, even unconsciously, you can decide as a woman, like, maybe this field is not for me. It doesn't even have to be an active decision, like, oh, I don't want to be there because it's only men, but it's just not appealing at all.
Yep.
So I think that's definitely an issue. I do feel it's getting a little better, but we have a long way to go.
Yeah, great. Just very quickly, one more here.
So it's not only about quantum, but I think it's more general when we go higher in the top management level, that during decades and decades it was men networking with other men, so you have more contacts and more access, and women don't have that access yet. So we need more representation at higher levels, and also for women to be more out there and daring to try things. So there was a study on cognitive bias, decision, stuff like this, and they did this test with kids at school, saying, we give this mathematical test for boys and girls, and we see the result. And boys performed better than girls the first time. Then they did another test, and they just said before that this exam was designed for girls to do it better. But it was the same. And girls performed better. So there is this social pressure that as a woman or as a girl, you are not made for science. And this needs to change by, again, putting more role models and creating that space to have that network, to get connections, to be able to reach those higher places.
100%. And actually, thank you for sharing. And we've seen that escalator, right? Why did anyone agree to walk up the stairs? You know, he said, sorry?
In the Netherlands, they will not accept it.
Yeah, maybe that's why they do experiment in the UK, but you'll have your own challenges as well in the Netherlands. So it'll be different format.
Be the person making the points, maybe.
Totally, 100%. So this one I briefly talked about, you know, it's why I do what I do. The status quo has a negative impact on almost everyone. So we actually had the amazing speaker, Laura Bates. She started something called the Everyday Sexism Project. I do recommend you go and have a look at it. It is shocking what she is collecting the whole time. But she put this slide up. It's not men versus women. We hear a lot when we talked about this. It's men versus women. And she just talked about how the fact that for every issue that women face, is men actually have a similar issue, but it's the other side of the coin. Okay, so when we look at things like women being hysterical, being emotional at work, I mean, I always find it amazing that we talk about the need for emotional intelligence, and actually say when people do show emotion, then you actually punish them for it. It's incredible. But on the one hand, women saying, showing their emotions at work. On the other hand, we're seeing huge high suicide rates from men who have become disconnected from their feelings. Yeah, and find it hard to share their feelings. We do see this a lot. So in the work that I do, there's this lack of emotional vulnerability and support in the workplace. Yeah, on the same time, for women that sit in a very masculine workplace, actually, if they show their vulnerability, if they show their emotions, there's a hostility towards that behaviour. But if we look at parenthood, yes, we have the maternity discrimination in the workplace. But again, when I talk about privilege, I think context is really important, because if you're a father standing in court as you go through divorce, you don't have the privilege when it comes to custody. Yeah, more than not, it will be the mother that gets the custody. So there's that kind of real challenge for fathers, and I know some fathers have actually that's really suffered from that. And whereas we talk a lot about the pressure for women to have to sacrifice their careers, which they shouldn't do, at the same time, the pressure for men to continue to provide, even though the world has changed, is still so. I run something called the Token Man Brain Trust, which is C-suite leaders. It is so ingrained in men that they need to be the providers that actually, if they feel that things are going badly or they're failing, it has huge negative mental health issues. Yeah, and these things are real. So, same question. I'm just going to give you 2 minutes this time. In your groups, what gender-related issues do men face in quantum?
I don't know. Well, there is, as he said, related to this pressure to provide, there is very much like a pecking order of who's the most expert, right? And there's often...
Where's the slide number?
That's why we should have CEOs, chief emotional officers, and not emotional officer, not chief secretary.
So, I'd like to hear some different voices. Everyone, could I hear a couple of examples of men, what some of the challenges men face? One here, one more. Well, I'd like to hear from one of the men, actually. Another hand up. If you could put another hand up so we can get a mic to you.
Sure. So I actually just experienced it like a couple of years ago when I was doing my PhD in a group. There was an office of people, 1 woman and 3 men. And everybody was waiting for being the first assistant professorship, like they were waiting for the title. But my female colleague got it, and it really broke the others even to write the paper quickly because they became so aggressive, even towards each other. I mean, while they were waiting to be the first one, stepping up the ladder, it was the female one, and I think they could even see their character disorder, if I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah.
So I think men is not able to actually like even deal with the success of women because we need to. This is our life. But I think that's their problem a little bit. They need to learn maybe how to handle.
Yeah, listen, I don't know the particular scenario. I mean, I think when it comes down to one of the So the reason we do masculinity in the workplace, we do call it we don't call it men in the workplace, we call it masculinity, is actually because what you find in most workplaces is traditional masculine skills are rewarded over other skills. So in that particular case, we know that young men going into any profession are just taught to be competitive. In fact, we did a piece of research that showed that young men would rather make a mistake that costs the company money than actually collaborate with others. Yeah, so understanding that, I think, is really important. Anything else? Anyone, one of the men, did you talk about any of the challenges? I'm going to go here. No one's. Yeah, we go back there. Go on, there's some gentleman there.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I'm not sure if it's framed as if I can state it as that's my issue, but in our company, we actually really am trying to do something about this. But as a male, I feel that pressure, and I feel also that I'm failing, and I'm not exactly know how to solve that. So, for instance, we would like to get a much higher percentage of females also in our company, and just adding under a job description, women are encouraged to apply, is not the answer. That's not the way how to solve it. And for me as a male, I feel that I have that responsibility also, given the position we have in the company. But I find it very difficult to make that change, to attract them in. And if we're not doing it, I also feel the pressure of I am failing.
Yeah, well, firstly, big tick to this man for being vulnerable and talking about his failures, because that's what when we talk about vulnerability in the workplace. So thank you so much for sharing. Come and speak to me afterwards, because I'll give you some tips. But yeah, I mean, listen. The reality is we can't do this on our own. We need support. We need help from lots of different places. So and coming back to that ally, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because you were talking about being an ally. So when people talk about ally, I'm sure everyone's heard of the term performative allyship. There's a huge backlash from historically marginalised groups around the word ally, because actually too many people think just doing this small thing actually makes them an ally. You're only an ally if you're changing the system. It is the system that is exclusionary to women and other historically marginalised groups. So if you're an ally, you need to be asking yourselves, what am I doing to change the system? I love this quote. It's what a client said to me about 5 years ago. He just said, "We have just realised that we have spent the last 7 years trying to train women to thrive in a man's culture when we should have been training men to work with women to change the culture." There are still too many people who are trying to get difference and take difference out of it and fit it into a culture. Okay, what we need to be doing is actually changing that culture in the first place. So this is the image I use the most. I go into workplaces. I'm working with senior leadership, two senior leaderships next week, and I haven't gone to a senior leadership team where they talk about the definition of inclusion is everyone having equal opportunities. And the minute I hear equal opportunities, I know, okay, you're where I was 10 years ago. So I don't want to criticise them because I was there 10 years ago, but they are where you are. And so if you ever think it's about equal opportunities, this is the world that you are happy living in. Okay, so in this particular image, the height represents privilege. Okay, the fence represents the real barriers that exist in every workplace to true inclusion and diversity. Giving everyone the same means that this person with the least privilege just can't see over the fence. They're not taking part in the ball game. What I love about this image of equity is that the person with the most privilege has actually given up their box to support the person with the least privilege. And so they've helped them see over the fence. Obviously, alongside equity, what we need to be doing is we need to be lowering that fence. The reason my old consultancy was called Utopia is because getting rid of the fence is utopia. We're never going to achieve it, but we should always strive towards it. And that's when we talk about changing the culture, that's what we need to be doing. So, benefits are leaning in. And the benefits for everyone, but I think the reality, coming back to that point, why am I standing up doing it? Because unfortunately, and I know this through bias, if someone that looks different to me says it, that people think, oh yeah, of course they're going to say that. There is truly, my life has changed. I would say so many different things, but I would never get, and some of it's been a struggle. Yeah, it's been tough. It's really tough, and I haven't talked about that today, but I wouldn't change a single thing. So what I want you to do now for 2 minutes again, what do you think the benefits of men leaning into IND are? So again, personal. What are the benefits? It's 2 minutes in your groups. And if you can do it in pairs. I haven't heard from anyone back here, so I'd love to hear when we come back in. Love to hear your voices. So everyone, very quickly, I want 5 benefits. We're not going to leave here to have 5 benefits. So this gentleman here, I know he wanted to speak last time, so I'll get him to speak first. So I'm volunteering. I'd like to see some people from the back there, because I haven't heard anyone from that space. So so I need 5 hands, and then very quickly just talk about benefits. 5 hands. There's 1 there. 2 here. 1 here. Microphones. Great. There's 2 there. At the front here. Thank you. So very quickly, just quick benefit.
Well, it might make a work environment less toxic, masculine, so it might make this place better for everybody that's working there in the end.
Fantastic. Great. Over there.
Well, I'm not going to answer this question because I don't like this question. Saying that, how can we benefit men for them to change things? For me, it's why it has to benefit men to start changing things. We are facing the problem. And injustice will be the reason why things should change. It doesn't have to benefit men. It's basically saying, because it's a man's word, we need to find the benefit for men for them to start moving.
I don't disagree with you. I've been doing this work for 6 years. If I just ask men to come in the room, they don't come in the room. There's a reason why we talk about the benefits, because it does benefit everyone. Why wouldn't we talk about the benefits?
Because here it's saying...
I know, but why wouldn't... I
men.
agree. But I totally concur with what you're saying. But given there are benefits for men, why would we not talk about the benefits? Because we've got more chance of bringing them in the room if they can understand the benefits to them. Does that make sense?
Not really. But
Okay. Makes sense for men, not for women.
Well, but the men are the people, who, apart from the men in this room, are the ones that aren't in the room. So we have to find ways to bring them in the room.
Anyway, they are not in the room.
But it's not.
Yes, they are here.
No. I mean,
yeah.
people here, they understand.
Yeah.
So they are not looking for the benefits for them. But those who are looking for benefits, they are not here.
I understand. I totally understand where you're coming from. But what I'm trying to say is there are benefits for men. So let's also talk about those, because we've got more chance for getting the men in the room. So who else would like to talk about benefits? Anyone? Here. More creative process. One more.
Just you basically you don't miss like creative brains and brilliant person that could have been rejected without an IND.
100%. Fantastic.
Changing terminology, so the abbreviation CEO should not be Chief Executive Officer, should be Chief Emotional Officer.
Yeah.
So if you allow yourself to be emotional, for me, you are a man.
Yeah.
You are not, and I think many men perhaps they are afraid of showing their emotions.
Yeah, 100%. And so there's a brilliant book by Bell Hooks. It's called The Will to Change. If you haven't read it, I recommend you read it. It's such a brilliant book. It talks about men being disconnected from their feelings. And we know it's a huge issue. So if you're interested, this is a survey that we did. We're looking specifically at men who have been leaning into IND. 97% of the men who completed it said they are better leaders and or human beings as a result of the work they've done. I don't think there can be a bigger kind of resounding figure for that. This is also some of the things they said where they saw the benefits: open to new ideas and learning, more empathetic and patient, confident to challenge the status quo, being able to explore my vulnerability and build better connections and trusted more by others. Okay, so these are huge benefits to everyone, not just those men, everyone around them. If anyone's interested and wants to get more involved, attached to that report is something called the Men Leaning In Matrix. Okay, so this allows you to look at, if you want to lean in, what does that look like? If you want to be an ally, what does that look like? If you want to be an agent of change, what does that look like? So it gives you a pathway for getting more involved as a man. So, final question. I have 50, I think I'm over. Just want you to think about, everyone to think about tomorrow, what you're going to do differently tomorrow. Thank you.